Hey everybody, welcome back to another Dice Tower review. My name is Zee Garcia.
I'm Milla Cleghorn.
Today we're going to be taking a look at Frostpunk, the board game here, which is a cooperative, large-scale, big, epic game based on a video game by the same name, in which you are trying to, well, survive. You're trying to fuel up this generator. You are trying to deal with the people you've got available to you. You're trying to keep them healthy and alive and not sick and prosper. That's kind of what you're doing. It's a very, very large game.
Yes.
I will be doing an overview of the game. It's going to take a bit. I am going to gloss over a lot. I will mention right now, this is not a learn to play. Please do not use this video as a learn to play. And if you just want to hear some thoughts at the end, feel free to jump around the overview, of course, because like I said, it is quite long. So, yeah, let's go ahead and cut to that. Let me show you the game, and we'll be back in a bit. So here we're looking at part of the game set up and ready to begin. I cannot show you all of the boards and all of the areas at the same time on the table, and I will state again that this is definitely not a how to play. I'm just giving you a feel for the game, showing you some of the parts in it to, again, give you just a sense of how the entire thing operates. So, to set up the game, we've already gone ahead and done everything. We need to pick from the scenario book a scenario. We're doing the first one here called A New Home, which has a stack of cards here. And then we pick a society card, this one here, that gets us a difficulty. You'll pick that. And then also a little flavor and some setup. So we've got our workers here. This lets us know we begin with 22 laborers, 12 engineers, 8 kids. None of them are sick. I've already represented all of that up there. Some food, no hunger right now. That again is here. And then some supplies. 8 food, 4 wood, and 5 coal. That's over here right now, okay? We also begin with 1 death already, which is represented right there on the 1. So that's what this does, and we've gone ahead and set all of that up. The scenario book also tells us to set up some other things over here where the storm is going to be, round 1, and then if we reveal the top card here, we'll put this face up somewhere that lets us know that we have an event coming up in round 4, which is what this is, and then something coming up round 11. And each of those have consequences, good or bad, depending on where you're at that point. In this game, you're not quite sure what you need to achieve to win, but you do know several ways in which you lose. So pretty much any time that you would hit one of these symbols here, then that is going to be an endgame loss. And there's a few different ways in which that can happen. For example, if you have 10 deaths, that'll do it, okay? And again, like I said, there's a few different ways to do that. So this would stay face up. That is our current objective and sort of what we're pushing towards. Achieve this so that you do better and get the good option out of 2 different options. The players are going to be working together trying to achieve those objectives, and they will do so going through these 9 steps every round. Now we begin the very first round in the action phase, which is over here, and it's actually the 6th phase. But then once you've done those, you begin at the top again for the next time. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the top here. But don't forget, during the very first round of the game, you actually go right into the action phase. So during the step 1, the first one, dawn phase here, we're going to pass the leadership marker. This goes to the next player. We're going to move the round marker, which takes it from here to here. If it lands on anything, we deal with that thing. And then we resolve any development and scenario trigger tokens, which we hit, okay? These are the scenario ones. Anything else that might end up there, we deal with that. Second phase is the morning phase, where we reveal and resolve a morning card. And those are going to be right here. Morning cards. These are basically little moral dilemmas that we are dealing with. You'll reveal one of those and it tells you this happened, these people showed up. How do you want to deal with this? You want to let them in? We have more mouths to feed in that case. Do you want to push them away? Morale is going to drop, and so on. So you're dealing with some choice you have to make and then the repercussions of that. And sometimes cards, because of the choice you made, get shuffled into another deck and might come back with, again, sort of consequences of that thing. So that is the morning phase. Then we go to the generator phase, which is the 3rd phase. During the generator phase, we have to fuel the generator, okay? To do that, we can spend coal to fuel the generator. We can figure out how many times we want to do that. And this is the current cold level of the generator. We can push this up to fuel that generator. This is going to do 2 things. During this phase, we are really mostly dealing with who gets sick. So we are going to spend a coal for every time we want to push this up during the generator phase. Then we are going to drop coal from the supply into the generator and see how many come through. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and heat this up 2. 1, 2. That means I'm spending 2 of these and they go away back in the supply. Next, I'm going to check who gets sick. Well, we have one laborer here who gets sick, okay? So we're going to take this and push it up. That person's sick. Then we are going to drop in coal into the generator that represents the stress it's under. We take a look at next to this, and right here it says 2 stress. Fine, so we get 2 of these from the supply. And don't forget, this is not always the amount you spend to heat it up. It's just 1 you spend to click up every time. The amount of stress you throw in is on this board. So we take 2 of these and we throw them in here. And then we open up a drawer at the bottom of this, which I'm having a hard time doing, and then the cubes might or might not have come through. Anything that came through, in this case both, but sometimes they get stuck in there, is going to make it over here, and that is stress on the generator. If this makes it all the way to the top and there's still more, that's problematic. If it happens twice, we've lost the game. There are ways for you to pull this back down, of course. So that is how that works. And then once you've done that, this resets to the bottom. If you want to use it during the placement, the action phase, you need to heat it up again. And I'll show you that in 1 second. So this is all kind of testing that the generator indeed is keeping people alive. Next, we go to the weather phase, in which we're going to draw one of these weather cards. We're going to flip that over. It tells you what changes over here at the top. So this goes up. It's a little colder. And some of these pieces go up. So this one, the yellow one goes up 1, and the orange one goes up 1. The red one does not move, it says. This is food that we make, and it has to it ties to some buildings that are on the board, okay? And then over here we've got, this is for folks going out on expeditions. Then the storm gets a little bit closer to us, so we're going to scoot this up. The storm comes up as the turns go down, and at some point in here they will meet, and we'll have to deal with that. I will point out right now, before I continue on to the next phase after weather phase here, that some of these components you are seeing are upgraded wooden pieces that come in one of the expansions to the game. So just be aware of that. Some of these are wooden anyway, but some of them, like these here, are upgraded. And again, you can get those in the Frostlander expansion, I believe. So be aware of that, all right? So that is the weather phase. Next up, we go to the preparation phase. During the preparation phase, the players, who each have a one of these advisor cards, may play one of them. All of us at the table may choose one of these to play. It'll do some effect on the game, help us out a little bit. And then we have to resolve these sickness tokens that are at the top over here. So you'll see below each of the sections, so say that section there, there's one right there between 5 and 9, there's a section. There's a symbol below those, and we have to deal with that, which is a sickness event. Some folks are going to get sick and possibly die eventually. These symbols here are going to flip over, and they show a little skull. Let me see. Right there's a little skull. If this flips over again later on, we've lost someone. Someone dies, and we have to take that marker and move it back, and we also have to track one death down here, which again, all of it is bad. So there we go. That's how that works. And that is the preparation phase. Then we go into the action phase. And again, I'll remind you, this is where the game would have started at the beginning, when we were done setting up. So during the action phase, we have to make sure that we have the right number of meeples, of citizen meeples, to take actions with, okay? This board up here represents how many people we have alive, right? So right now, for example, again, 8 children. We have 12 engineers and laborers up here, just workers. We have 22 of those. But to place workers, we don't get that many. We are going to get whatever's above it. So for example, for the kids, they're within this area here. We get 2 of those meeples. And we take those and we put them right here. For the laborers, way over there, we get 5 of those, which are these. And then the engineers, we get 3 of those. So these are the actual workers we're using. Again, each of these then represents several people, if you want to think of it that way. And we are going to be using these to take various actions in the game. The players can all figure out how they want to use these workers to take actions. I will point out the kids tokens here cannot normally be used to take actions. You can pass a law in the game or have some other ability which will let you use these to do something in the game. You normally cannot do that, okay? So let's talk about what I can spend these people to do, all right? You can remove snow. You can gather resources. You can construct. You can use a building, or you can send out some scouts or perform some special action or scenario-given ability that you can trigger, right? From the top, removing snow. That's the first one. If you want to remove snow, you're going to go right here in this area. You move a person down there, and then you get to remove snow. You get to uncover more things. That it means putting out more tiles. You can put out 2 nearby tiles or 1 far away tile. If you do the 2 nearby, you decide where they want to go, you put them out, and then you reveal them. So let's say I'm doing this one, and I'm doing this one. This is going to get some wood, so I would take that wood from the general supply and put 2 wood there, 1 coal there. Over here, we're also putting a resource, one of these. And then this tile says we get 2 food right now as well. It's a one-time thing, so we go ahead and get 2 food. You'll see some half tiles here are empty, and of course when something is depleted, that half is also empty. We can utilize those half tiles to build buildings, okay? And we'll come back to that. Let me first show you how to gather resources. So that was removing snow. In order to gather resources, you can go ahead and send out a person to those locations to gather resources. I will mention, before I go on, I was telling you a little bit earlier about doing things that are cold or that are heated. Well, removing snow is always cold. That means somebody always gets sick from doing that. And there's a reminder image there. So this person, one person, would get sick by removing snow. When you are gathering resources, it depends. It depends if the location where you are gathering is heated. Right now, because this resets to the bottom at the end of the generator phase, nothing's heated. So we can spend some coal to heat up some things, 1 to 1. So 1, 2, 3. Here we go. And then as you see, there's a line here that cuts through. Right now, any building that is this color or this color is heated. And again, I haven't shown you those yet. And then the central area and the ring right around it, those are heated. So we're good. These just go back in the supply. I will point out, you do not throw anything in the generator now. That only happens during the generator phase. You just spend this to heat up and be able to take actions without anybody getting sick. So there we go. We've done that. Now we can send out a person here. For example, I can go here. This is now heated. This person is within the this secondary ring. And you collect 2 things from there. So I'll take that, put it in my supply. Maybe I can send somebody else out. I can go here and collect 2 of those. Put those in the supply, what have you. You can keep heating, by the way, the generator during this phase at any point you want. If suddenly you realize, yo, I need 1 more click here, you can spend it now if you have it. So anytime during the action phase, you can do that, okay? I'm going to go ahead and move this guy out of here so you can take a look at some things on the table there. There's also another building that should be here, which I did not set up. And there's a couple of pre-printed buildings there. So to do a building, you can send a person there. Sometimes it takes specifically an engineer, which these 2 both do. So you can send one of these engineers to these locations to utilize that. This one over here lets you repair the reactor here by removing some of these. And then this one over here lets you pass a new law. Laws are cards you put into play that allow you to change some ability, some rule. One of them, for example, lets you put kids to work. They come with other boons or penalties. So you can pass laws, and there's some laws set up at the beginning of the game that you may look through and pass those if you want to. So that's how to use a building, which I've already explained, basically. And now let's talk about how to build buildings. There's this board here, which I've not finished setting up, but is populated with tiles, which represent buildings, right? So this hunter's hut, goes there. There's a stack of them that sits right there. And if you want to build, then you send somebody here, and you get 3 sub-building actions. Those actions let you build a building each, go upgrade something, what have you. So some other buildings let you do things. So for example, the hunter's hut here, it says down here it takes 1 wood. I can, for one of those 3 sub-building actions, I can spend a wood, put it back in the supply, and take a hunter's hut here and build it somewhere on one of these half tiles. I can even, by the way, build one here and here. Those two begin, ready to go, and empty for me. Once these are in play, I can send a worker there. And for example, the hunter's hut here, it says I get 4 food. I can send somebody there and get 4 food. Eventually, some other buildings will let me upgrade these buildings, and they get a little bit better. Plus, the insulation gets better, which is the colored strip at the bottom. Again, that ties to, is that building heated or not? Well, in this case, the hunter's hut being right here, it's yellow. Yellow's not heated. I'm right below that. But it is within this ring, and that ring is heated. So it's good to go. If I built it out here, though, that would not be heated because yellow's not heated, and it's too far away. So if it falls within one of the two for being heated, you're good to go. Again, there's a lot of different buildings here that do plenty of different things. I'm not going to go over these, but basically these over here are for housing people so that they don't get sick. These over here are going to keep your people healthy and fed generally, plus allow some exploration. And then these are large buildings that take up both spaces. So that building's going to take up both of these. And again, they have to be empty for you to build there. Or if there's something still sitting on that tile, you can deploy a new building there, but you're giving up anything that was previously there. So if I want to build a tall building right here, I can, but then I'm giving up all these things and I can no longer gather those. I'm allowed to do that. Constructing buildings, by the way, doing this action always counts as heated. Now the next one is deploying scouts. You can't even deploy scouts until you build a specific building. But once you do, you're going to have some of these cards that are sitting out there. There's 3 available to you. And you can send out a worker, one of these meeples here. You can send them there, and they will advance along the path, making it up here. You got a choice there if you want to continue exploring further or turn back around. I'm not really going to go into these too much, but they have some event on the back that you can, if you want to stop exploring when you make it to the top of the card, you reveal it and deal with that there. Again, anybody you have here will advance based on this weather card that we looked at earlier. This number here, 3, and then that symbol means anybody on these cards would move 1, 2, and hey, do I want to stop or keep going? If I do want to keep going, I reveal another card here from deck B, and I go 3, and I keep going, all right? So there you go. Again, I'm not going to worry about these too much, but this is what the sending out scouts is all about, and that's what this number affects. Let me also point out that the players at the beginning of the game are given some of these cards here, and you can choose to use these to change a worker placement ability. So for example, I can use here as an engineer, I can use an engineer when they go to a medical post or an infirmary and they get to do something slightly different than what that building normally does. So that's what these do. You only have a few of these in your hand, but you can choose to use them for that. And if you have one for the children, by the way, even if you haven't passed the law where the kids can work, you can do this and utilize one of these pieces to do something. Normally it's a little weaker than the standard action it would be, but you get to do something with that token that normally does nothing at all for you. All right, so that's enough about actions. Let's talk about the next phase. The Dusk Phase is this board right here that is not set up, as you can tell. This one is going to have a stack of cards here. You flip over one of these and something happens. Again, here end up some consequences that happened because of your choices there, as well as just some general bad things that reshuffle and reset the deck. Things are, pretty bleak. So that's what the Dusk Phase here is going to do. You draw one of these and resolve it. And if there's any scenario cards that say they're resolved during the Dusk Phase, you would do that here as well. Once that's done, we go on to the Hunger Phase. So during the very first round, this is not going to be a thing, but let's say later on, you've gathered some hunger. So during the Hunger Phase, the first thing you do is you decrease hunger by using the food. So four hunger here, that means I ate up 4 food, which I'm down to there, okay? Then I need to resolve and reset the hunger marker. Meaning if I was not able to feed everybody, because this looks like this, I got 15 hunger but only 6 food, well, I'll spend my 6 food, which can feed that many people, brings me down to 9. Now I need to deal with the fact that below this, it says that things get a little bit worse with the discontent, hopelessness, and that somebody is going to possibly die. So that's all of that. And again, things are very bad over here. Below this, you see what's going on there. Once that's done, we deal with this ability and then we reset the hunger, okay? Then we're going to feed citizens indicated by the current round. And the current round is right here. At the top of this, it tells me which of the 3 classes of characters, kids, engineers, regular workers, I need to feed. So I figure out how many of those people I have, boom, and I have to feed those people. If I cannot feed them, right now I have 12 of them, I need to increase the hunger to 12, and I'll deal with that next turn. So this sort of like carries over. I'm trying to now gather food so that when it's time to feed them next time, they both will drop, and I have enough food to feed that leftover hunger. And then the final phase is the night phase, in which I'm going to return my spent workers. All of these are going to come back to me. I come back over here. These people come back here. I'm going to lay down the meeples in the heated shelters, which is types of buildings. Okay, so these people can sleep there. These people can sleep there. Again, obviously these would be the specific buildings. And anybody who cannot sleep in a heated place, well, my sick folks are going to go up. Okay, and that's it. Then we go back to the next day, the next round, and we go back to the dawn phase where I pass the start player marker. We move the round, and we do it all over again, right? Heating up the generator, making sure that we take a look at the weather, prepare for the next one, take some actions, gathering, building, what have you. Then we do the dusk, where some bad things might happen or things come back around to bite us. Hunger. Night phase, where everybody tries to sleep in a warmed place. And that's the general flow of the game. Again, like I said, you're not quite sure how to win, because those are going to come from these cards here. These scenario cards tell you where to go as things happen. Right? So did you, when you get to round 4, did you build the beacon? If so, go to A over here. Otherwise, go to B. And these are going to be, of course, affecting the flow of the game. So there you go, folks. There's one more board I should probably show you before I'm gone here, and that is this one. This is going to have basically a good track and a bad track, okay? Discontent and hope and various things like that. These are going to many times be spent by events and cards and what have you. So for example, this is care. If a card says you may spend care to do whatever, then I can take this token and flip it face down like that, and I've now spent care. Okay, sometimes it'll check, is there apathy? This is apathy, but it's turned off right now, right? On the other side, it would be turned on. So you're checking for various things like that. If there's ever so much of this that it gets to here, you lose. And if there's ever none of this, you lose. So this is another thing you need to manage in the game, and you draw these from little baggies and set them out. And try to manage again when they're on or when they're off, trying to keep it under control and utilize the good things so that you can get some good benefits. So there we go. Okay, now that's it. Let's go back up top. All right, there we go. So Frostpunk, the board game, like I said, is based on a video game. And so we'll, I think, start right there with the theme of the game and the ties to that video game. Okay. So the theme is this alternate history. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, but it's alternate history. So it's not futuristic, right? Mm-hmm. It's like set in the late 1800s, I want to say. I think is when the thing is set. Yeah. And so again, something cataclysmic has happened, and people are not, barely able to cling on and survive. Yeah. So the video game feels, which I've played a little bit on consoles, though, which I think this is definitely kind of like a computer game. Ideally, is sort of the way it seems to be wanting to be played. But I played on a console. And it is kind of an old school management game in which you are, managing your resources and collecting and building up. And, it's a very sim kind of game. Like old school, a sim kind of game. Very interesting. And this is a very close approximation of that. So I think if you are someone who is coming from the video game, you're interested in this. You're not necessarily much of a board gamer, but you are very familiar with that video game. I think this does a really good job approximating the things that happen in the video game. Okay. I don't have much experience with the video game, so I'll have to try. I've seen it, and it was definitely like, that's a lot of menus. I'm good, thanks. I will completely defer to you on that one. Yeah, I think, again, if you are comfortable with how much is going on in the video game and you can keep up and do this and do that, I think you'll be able to handle this because the game has a lot going on. But it does a really good job of approximating that. Yeah, so...
Do you... I'm sorry, not to cut you off. Do you feel, because this is a very rules-heavy game,
yes.
do you feel like having played the video game, it helps you with the mechanisms and understanding the flow of the game?
It helps you understand why some things are there. I think it's not necessarily going to help you with the mechanisms of the game. That's not always a one-to-one, you know? But it is going to help you know that, oh, these people are going on explorations or expeditions or whatever. I know what that is.
Okay.
When the map zooms out and then I pick my little group of people and I go to another dot on the map. Sure, it doesn't look like that in this game, right? But I know what it is attempting to simulate from the video game. And I think, again, it does a really good job of bringing that one-to-one to a different experience altogether. I think some games based on video games do it very well and will service the people that like the video game. Some don't. I think this one does.
Okay.
So, speaking of that, the theme here is very bleak. I like that theme. I think you like that theme.
I like it a lot, yeah.
And with that theme comes really cool setting, a lot of artwork that comes right out of the video game, but also some interesting moral dilemmas.
Right. And I think that's what I like about it. I can see how some people would be put off by that, having to make those decisions and feel like morally compromised, you know? But so I see and I respect that. But for me, it's a board game. You know, I don't have as much of a real world connection to it, so it doesn't bother me. And I love that. I love that it does have you make those decisions that kind of challenge your thinking, but you also know it's going to come back. So yeah, I want to do this morally right thing and not, have child labor, for example.
Right.
You know? But not having child labor means I have these workers that I have to find tents for on my board, and I have to provide housing, but I get nothing back in return.
Right.
You know, and so you really have to have that balance, and I think that that's really interesting because when you pass laws, there are other laws that become non-available.
Right.
You know, and I love that system of having to make those those decisions to change the outcome of the game and potentially influence future events.
Sure.
I think that is fantastic. It leads to like a good discussion, a good weight. How are you going to play, building your strategy in the game around those different laws and I say permanent changes. They're permanent changes for your gameplay, not in a legacy style.
Thankfully,
so,
yes, I am
for sure.
Definitely. This is not a game that needs to be a campaign. There's a lot of campaign games. It's very fine the way it is. Yeah. Talking about mechanisms and passing laws and this and that, and I agree with you that it's really interesting doing that whole. This is awful, but is it good for us as a whole? Is it good for the community I'm trying to keep alive? That's very interesting. But let's go ahead and discuss then mechanisms. What we think of the mechanisms. Are there too many mechanisms? What did we like? What did we not like? All of that stuff. Okay, so for me, I'll tell you what, starting to learn the game, having, 9 phases is certainly very intimidating. And
there's a lot of crossover in the phases that play out differently, if that makes sense. So, for example, you will use coal to heat up at multiple times, but only at one time do you feed that into the generator and possibly have it come out. And remembering the details of that flow when there's similarities, but they play out differently, can be confusing. Like, you need that flow chart. You need that player aid the entire time and the full pages to go with it for those clarifying details.
I agree. There's a lot of them. I do find the feed the generator phase, whatever that one's called, to be probably one of the trickiest ones, one of the clunkiest ones. Some are great, and to be fair, I think it needs to be broken down that much because of how much is going on in the game. I appreciate the fact that they are telling me, okay, you're done with that now. Put that down. Here's the next thing. Reveal a weather card. Go down the 4 steps. Good. Put that down. Here's the next thing. I want it to be chewed up and spit back out like this. I appreciate that. Yeah. But there are a lot of mechanisms in this game, and I do find some of them to be a little bit clunky. I think the generator feeding is a little clunky. I think just dealing with the hunger phase is really clunky. Yes. Okay, the fact that I am feeding people, I generate hunger this round, but I feed people that had hunger this round, next round.
Yes.
Feed them and then generate new hunger for the next day or whatever it's really clunky. I think
Which-
that phase is very weird.
I agree. And that is one that I had to check the rules and go through step by step and make sure, wait, the hunger, it's not just using thematic terms, it's actually talking about a specific part. You know what I mean? And so remembering that, like, this is the hunger and this is the food, and I'm moving this one to move that one. It is clunky. Thematically, I see why it's that way, though. I mean, if they don't eat today, they're going to be hungry tomorrow, so you have to take care of it tomorrow before you... So it's like, I get it thematically, but it does grind a little bit each time.
Yeah.
And it is one more thing to think about. One more set of buildings that you need, one more set of rules in an entire phase, So it's, again, I get why it's there and I see it, and you're talking about people and you're making these moral decisions, so I see it. Do you set up the hunting lodge and keep them well fed? How much rations do you allow them to have? Things like that. Like, you're making these important decisions in the game. Thematically, it's there, but it does gunk the game up a little bit.
Yeah, that's it, right. As far as things I really, really liked mechanically, though, I mean, the big overview is dealing with something, passing a law, having an encounter, dealing with some sort of dilemma, and then something gets shuffled into that Dusk deck.
Oh, that's so good.
That's fantastic.
It's so good.
It's this idea of, you did that, okay, something will come of this.
Yes.
Let's shuffle this over here, and when you draw that, you'll see what came of it.
Yes.
I
So
find
good.
that to be incredibly fun. I know that this game gets compared a decent amount, it seems, to Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. And that's certainly one of the mechanisms that it is, that makes it obviously get compared. But I find it to be incredibly well handled in this game. And it happens a nice amount, too.
It does. One drawback of it, I think, in this game is there's there's a big deck that you're pulling from. You make your decision. It's like, all right, now go to this other deck and pull this card to shuffle into your Dawn deck or whichever one it is.
Dusk.
Dusk. I'm thinking it's the Dusk. You're right. And so you shuffle it in there, and that's only like 3 cards. That does mean that the one standard Dusk card is going to be in every game, shuffled multiple times during the game. So with that, I guess just from a production standpoint, I keep I'm going to need to keep a sleeve of cards. Pack of sleeves for cards.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that wear is the same, so you don't inadvertently mark the cards because they are dark. So
some get used more.
Right. Yeah. And so from production, that was a little bit disappointing, but I just sleeve those couple as I go because I don't think there's room in the box to have all the cards sleeved. It is a tight fit.
Yeah, this is a tremendously large box. And speaking of that, we should talk about the footprint of this game on the table. When you saw the overview, I was definitely showing you maybe 2/3 of everything that comes in the box that you need to set up.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of boards, individual boards that go here and there and everywhere. And you need a massive table to deal with all this. You will not have access to it all on the table. So it's going to take a lot of table room. You're just going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to basically walk around around the table if you're playing solitaire. There's so much to deal with. Right.
You would definitely have stand-up moments consistently through the game.
Yeah,
you have to reach over there and get something or put something down. Right.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so there's that. There's that concern. It's incredibly sprawling. There's also the generator, which goes in the center of the table and looks just like the video game. That's where it is. Cool. It's built up. You can spin around it and fuel it up and all that stuff. And it has that cool sort of cube tower mechanism. But it definitely gets in the way of seeing across the table.
Yeah, and that's something I went back and forth on. I really struggled with because it looks so cool and thematically it's there, and I love the idea. It's the core thought behind this in this theme. I hate to say mechanism because it's not a game mechanism, but it's a core part of this theme in this game. But it's also not useless. But it feels useless and completely in the way. But I don't know what else you could do because you need something. I understand that if you put 3 in, it matters if 2 or 3 come out.
Right.
So you need something like that. But it's big and it's pretty obtrusive.
It's kind of clunky and big and in the way. Now, to be fair, I think I showed you this in the overview. You can just set it aside and flip over that central tile and play on there without it in the way. And that's fine, I suppose, but you know what? It kind of hurts the theme. It's supposed to be in the middle, spewing smoke, creating heat around itself. For me to put it over here on the side and just throw some cubes into it every now and then breaks that immersion a little bit.
But I struggle with it because I don't know what you could have done differently.
I guess so. I get that, and it looks tremendous. But, again, another minor chink in the armor of this game. That's all I'm saying, okay? Yeah. So ultimately here, I think we need to discuss then who we think this is for and give you some final thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Easy one for me is people who like the video game a lot. I do think this is a great approximation of that video game. I think this is really, even if you're not much of a board gamer, if you like that video game, I really think you're going to like this board game.
And do you think if they really like I guess what you just said, if they're not really a board gamer, do you think the rule book is good enough that someone lightly in board games, if they know the video game really well, could pick it up and play?
It's a really complicated video game.
Okay, so you think so?
I think
okay,
so,
good.
yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, what about you? Where do you kind of fall in line here with who you think this might be good for?
I think this is good for people who like survival cooperative games and don't mind that heavy complexity, a little bit of grinding, because again, you said it's going to get compared, it has, and it is going to continue to get compared to Robinson Crusoe. And I think that's a very valid comparison. I'm not comfortable at all saying it's a Robinson Crusoe killer. At all. But I do think that there are those comparisons and a lot of basics that are the same. So if you like that style, if you don't mind those heavy games, but you like that thematic immersion of it, you understand why the game is as heavy as it is, why some of those things are a little bit clunky, why things are getting in the way. If you understand that and you're okay with it because of that thematic integration and you like that cooperative discussion to try and just scrape forward as best you can, then I absolutely think this is for you.
Yeah, you have to be obviously okay with the complexity and the sprawling nature of the box.
And the difficult nature of the game.
And
it is a hard game.
Yeah, it's
very
tough to
hard.
do well. Yeah. There's also a bunch of scenarios, which I think I briefly mentioned in the overview there, but there's also different ways to set up the game. So there's a lot of content, is my point. There's quite a bit in there. So for me, this is a tricky one to give a number score to. It's so divisive. Some people couldn't toss this far away enough from themselves. It's just the way it is. So I'm going to give you my rating, right? What can I do? For me, this is a solid, very strong 8. This is not a game that's going to make it to the table all the time. Sometimes it literally can't, depending on what table I'm sitting at, really. But when I bring this out, whenever this makes it to the table, I think I'm going to have a fantastic time immersing myself in a bleak, kind of post-apocalyptic vibe, have some moral dilemmas thrown at me, have some interesting resource management, some cool worker placement, and just a fantastic time. It's not as bleak and dark as the designer's other very well-known game, this War of Mine. Okay. So this one is not, when I'm done, I'm not going to want to go cry in a corner, you know what I mean? But it is going to be, just that deep, thinky, heavy kind of game that, again, isn't going to come out to the table all the time. But when it does, I think I'm going to have a fantastic time with it. So really strong 8 from me. Nice. What about you? I'm coming in at a 9 for this. That we talked about who game is for. It's for me. This is for me. And honestly, I struggle even going a 9. It could go up to a 9.5. I love this game. I really like that complicated nature of it's the right puzzly, but puzzling, you're not going to come to a perfect solution. So it's a puzzle with compromises, and it's weighing those compromises to see, one, what you're willing to do for the society, morally, for the game, what it's kind of calling for. And I love that. I love that discussion that it brings. I love the complex nature and just, again, that thematic integration I can't get enough of. I absolutely adore this game. It is one that is going to be hard to get to the table, but it's one that I would plan a weekend around. All right. You know what I mean? I would, hey, do you want to do a board game, come over, we'll barbecue in the afternoon and then play this all night. I love this. I really, really enjoy it. I think it has a lot of legs with the content, with the different decisions that you can make and how that's going to play out. And I would, it's one I would make space for on my table and in my weekend to play. Right. So there you go. That is Frostpunk, the board game, ladies and gentlemen. Strong seal of excellence from us. And that's going to do it. So thanks very much for watching. My name is Zee Garcia. And I'm Milla Cleghorn. Watch out for the late 1800s. They're going to be cold. Okay, they're going to get you. No, we're warming it up.